Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, well, a really counterintuitive idea. How should we measure success? Status. Especially when we're talking about things like community service or leadership and maybe a spiritual context. We're diving into sources that argue pretty relentlessly, actually, that true success demands this kind of radical status inversion, that there's just no room for pride and service.
That's exactly right. And the material we've got for this deep dive, it's a really profound reflection on the New Testament. It draws heavily from the Apostle Paul's perspective on leadership, particularly in his first letter to the Corinthians. Paul becomes, for us, kind of the ultimate case study here, someone managing massive influence, but with just utter humility.
Right.
So the mission today is really to extract insights on how worldly standards, fame, resources, prestige, how they constantly threaten to corrupt genuine wisdom and effective service.
It feels like a crucial lesson because it really forces us to kind of discard the metrics we use every single day, right? In business, politics.
It's everywhere.
We need to understand why some of the most dedicated leaders, historically and even now, were seen by the wider world as, well, fools. And figure out what the true, maybe non-negotiable metrics of lasting service actually are.
Okay, so let's unpack this with Paul. Our sources, they jump right in, zoom in on his own assessment of his status. He describes the apostles as clearly listed last, as if condemned to death. A spectacle to the world, both to angels and to men. He's basically saying, look at us, we're at the bottom.
Right. And what the material really highlights there is if a foundational leader, someone like Paul, places himself as listed last, then, well, anyone following him has even less basis, really, for claiming any kind of prestige or status. And we need to remember Paul's sort of lost status. He wasn't born insignificant. He came from privilege. He had intellect.
Yeah, the sources remind us he could have been a real powerhouse, maintained an extremely high status as a leading Jewish rabbi. That was a position of huge prestige, real power in that society. Precisely. Or, he could have easily avoided all that intense persecution just by aligning with the Jerusalem legalists.
High-status traditionalists.
Exactly. Those guys prioritized strict adherence to ritual, visible status. That path, it would have guaranteed him safety, continued prestige among the establishment.
And he didn't take it.
No. Instead, he chose the mission to the Gentiles, the non-Jewish people. And that choice basically guaranteed him suffering, ridicule. He actively chose the harder path, the one that cost him worldly dignity, reputation.
So if Paul, this man with such high intellect, such potential, was willing to be seen as foolish, does that mean worldly standards of success are just fundamentally opposed to spiritual ones? Are they always in conflict?
The source material suggests they are, fundamentally incompatible. It shows the Corinthians were judging their leaders by exactly those worldly metrics. Who was the most eloquent speaker, the most connected, the most powerful?
Right.
And in God's eyes, this sticking to worldly standards, it actually made them foolish.
So how do you fight that pull, that gravity of worldly status? It's everywhere.
Well, the material offers a specific and pretty powerful insight here. It says the shortcut, if you like, to gaining spiritual wisdom is precisely by becoming foolish in the eyes of the world.
So you have to consciously choose the less prestigious road.
You have to opt out of that status game.
Okay, here's where that idea, trading status for something permanent, it gets distilled into this one really powerful statement. Our sources quote the missionary Jim Elliot. He said, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose."
Yes. That concept is, you could say, the philosophical engine driving humble service. If you break it down, what are the things that cannot be preserved? Those are entirely temporal, right? Worldly fame, status, resources, possessions, they're perishable assets. They fade.
And the unlosable things, what are they?
Well, unlosable things are the spiritual rewards, eternal life, and specifically the Master's commendation, the well done for faithfulness. And what's critical there is that this ultimate gain, it defies all objective, observable metrics. The world literally cannot evaluate it, can't verify the value of this faithfulness.
So it's the most counterintuitive gain possible. An invisible metric.
Exactly, an invisible metric.
Which loops right back to Paul's choices, sacrificing that high-status religious standing, something he couldn't keep forever anyway.
Right.
To gain that commendation he couldn't lose.
Absolutely. And the material draws a really strong parallel here to the ultimate example, Jesus himself.
Okay.
Note the source's observation. Jesus had no PhD, no worldly title, yet his words were profoundly impactful.
Yeah.
Conversely, those high-status officials, the legal guardians of the law, the very people who'd spent their lives studying divine matters, they looked down on him. They persecuted him.
But wait, if those officials had access to the truth and maybe even suspected his message was divine, why couldn't they just, compartmentalize, keep their status but still follow him? Does the source imply pride literally blinds you, makes truth impossible to see?
The material really suggests that yes, the pride tied up in their position, it blinded them. They were so concerned about losing face, losing status, losing control of the religious hierarchy, that they chose to reject the divine message right in front of them. Pride made them prioritize their social standing over simple, maybe even self-evident truth.
Wow.
And that is the danger inherent in seeking worldly prestige within the context of service. It can make you reject the very mission you're supposed to uphold.
Okay, so let's bring this forward. Community service today. Our sources warn pretty extensively about judging leaders, judging organizations, using those same, blinding worldly standards. Yeah. We're constantly tempted, aren't we, to apply business metrics growth, budget size, reach to things that maybe just defy that kind of measurement.
That fixation on external metrics, that's exactly where the rot can set in. The sources are very, very clear on this. It's wrong for community members, church members, whoever, to judge their ministers or leaders by any standard outside the prescribed mission standard. And it's also wrong, they argue, for people to boast about their preferred leader or ministry. Because the glory, ultimately, has to belong to the mission's divine source, not the person. Paul's letter to the Thessalonians reinforces this respect. Leaders, yes, but don't idolize them.
Wait, so you're saying worldly success isn't just a distraction, it can be actively counterproductive. It actually hurts the leader's mission.
In many cases, yes. The material points to a specific caution against the pride that can creep in when an organization or a community has lots of resources, or members who hold high-status positions, doctors, professors, politicians.
Right, the celebrity members.
Exactly. When a congregation or group starts focusing on having these high-profile people, they can easily start focusing on achievement in the eyes of men. They start mimicking the error of those Corinthians, obsessing over their own prestige.
And the source argues this focus on worldly success actually creates more pressure on the leader. How does that work?
Well, it shifts the entire mission focus. The pressure shows up as needing to manage public relations constantly, keeping high net worth donors happy, maintaining a specific, impressive public image that the high status members expect or demand. The focus drifts away from simple, humble care, or the core mission itself, and moves toward operational management, PR demands, fundraising targets. This burden just distracts from quiet, faithful service.
And the sources even mention a personal reflection from a pastor, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Comparing working in a rural area, Wylien, I think it was, versus leading a big city church.
Yes, and that reflection is key for understanding, sort of proportionality. In the rural setting, the focus was simpler. Relationship building, teaching, serving immediate physical needs. Pretty direct. In the large city church, the pressure was managing complex operations, public image, the intricate expectations of all those high-status members. But the source clearly states, every church, every pastor, every service organization has a sacred mission. The scale and location. They don't determine the spiritual value of the work. The challenges change, sure, but the mission's value stays equal in God's eyes.
So if scale, size, fame, if those are the wrong metrics, if we have to stop comparing ourselves and our leaders using these worldly rulers, then what is the true measure of success? What should we be looking for?
The true metric is profoundly simple, really. It's faithfulness and diligence.
Just that.
Fundamentally, yes. It's not about the quantity of achievement, but the quality of your obedience to the mission you were actually assigned.
Okay, this connects directly to the parable of the talents, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Perfect example. Yeah. When the master assesses the servants who received different amounts, the one with 1,000, the one with 2,000, the one with 5,000 talents, the reward isn't based on the sheer volume they started with, or even the total amount they gained.
Right.
The reward is based on being good and faithful, or good and diligent.
So the person with just other 1,000 talents, maybe fewer resources, less visible impact, they get the exact same commendation. Because the faithfulness metric is separate from the scale metric.
That is the core synthesis, exactly. The material stresses this universal humility because ultimately every single person, regardless of their role, from the leader of some global organization right down to a community volunteer helping out on weekends, is serving based on grace. Nobody has any merit to boast about before God. It levels the playing field entirely.
So the practical application then isn't about chasing visible success or climbing some ladder. It's just about participating humbly where you're needed, doing the job assigned.
Precisely. True obedience involves that humble participation in whatever service task you're given. Maybe it's singing in the choir, maybe it's handling reception duties, maybe taking minutes for a board meeting, or just doing the various tasks assigned by coworkers or ministers.
Yeah.
The goal is singular. Glorify the mission, benefit others, and fully recognize that you're serving out of grace, not earning points through prestige.
So we've really seen that spiritual leadership, at least according to these sources, it operates on a completely inverted economy. The way up is down. The wise, in the world's eyes, are fools. The last are first. And the goal is always just diligent service, rooted in this profound humility. Knowing that what you can't keep is being traded for that master's commendation you can't lose.
Which, it raises a really important question for all of us today. Given how pervasive social media is, status rankings, where every leader, every organization, every cause gets instantly measured by follower count, reach, resources.
Yeah, that's costive.
How often are you personally tempted to apply those worldly visible standards when you're evaluating, say, the effectiveness of a charity or a community leader, instead of focusing solely on their simple, quiet, often unseen faithfulness to their core mission?